Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Nivarthi Jairam, and we are back after a while. Kind of, we were caught up in too much of commitments that we could not make time to go through and continue our book reading sessions. I think now we have set a theme. Probably, we will try our best to continuously connect on that, and to as usual, we have with us our co-partner in this exercise. Even though I would not call him co-partner because he reads more, definitely more and more number of books than what I am used to. So we have Akhilesh Chaturvedi, who is the founder and CEO of Yayati and my coach for past many years now that we have been working together. So welcome Akhil to the session again. And today we are going to talk about the most famous book of our times, Start with Why. So, what is your first take on that book or the idea of starting with why, Akhil?
Good question. I got to know about this book when I was working for one of the companies, consulting company, and happened to work with Microsoft chief architect in London. And he said, before we develop the architecture for any organizations, let's understand why this architecture is needed, why this product is needed. And I said, okay, so how do I get to know? And he gifted me this book, Start with Why. Yeah. And I started thinking that, what.
One moment, I think somehow it got to mute. Can you please unmute yourself?
Oh, yeah. So I have to restart. So if you ask the questions again, then probably I'll.
Yeah, no worries. So, I was asking you the question about, what is your view on starting with why? That was my question for a start.
Yeah. So as I said, me got this book few years back. I think it's 2008 or so. I don't exactly remember, when I was working for one of the consulting company and happened to work with Microsoft in London. And the chief architect, one of the chief architects from the Microsoft, he said, okay, let's start with why we want to develop this architecture at the first place. Yeah. I said, okay, great. What do you mean by it? And then he gifted me a book called A Start with Why. Now, this year, when we started thinking that we are going to have a series of books reviews, we said, let's start with why we want to do the book review. Right? And let me explain why I wanted to work with you, Nivarthi, as a partnering in this work to do the book review. And then probably you can also explain, and then that will help us to define, right? I was in 2008, I was struggling to move to the next level of my career. And I met one guy who happens to be from from the same college where I passed out my engineering. And he said, Akhil, I read one book every 3 days. Yeah. And then he said there is a possibility that you can read one book a day. Yeah. And then the same thing comes, right? Why should you read so much a book? And he said that your life, your career is going to be shaped by how many books you read and how many people you meet. Yeah. And I found that a lot of people will not be able to read as many number of books because that has become the part of my living and the life of after some time. But if you can motivate the people to develop their self as who they wanted to become through this particular process, if we can, I believe that this forum which you have built will create lot more book readers, which is very important for their career to build. And in this particular process, we will also be able to build the network. So, how many people you meet and how many books you read, both the purposes are solved out here. And therefore, we thought that let's start with the purpose, that why we want to do this on a continuous basis every single day. Yeah.
Mm.
Now we can go into the nitty gritty of it, but then just wanted to understand your why. Now that why we wanted to do this book reading clubs initiative, which we started last year.
Yes, I think, see, where even the reason why it started in the first place for us was one, it, it if I have to read a book, for example, right, and each one of us have their own ways or of focusing or their speed of reading. Everybody probably is not like you, that you can read a book in 3 hours or 5 hours or even probably 1 hour, right? For me it takes a long time to read books. Now, as you rightly mentioned, that yes, by reading, you what happens for me, and what is intriguing for me is I get to reflect on the knowledge and experience that is being brought through the reading of books, and that reflection gives a greater uh, or reveals a greater sense about myself, right? What I
Hmm.
have probably done, what and why I did what I did, or what is the way forward. It can be what is happening today, or what happened, or what would happen, or what whether my path is right. So there could be a lot of things, and also sometimes even a book like this can even mean that, am I really pursuing my purpose in life, right? So and we did talk about that briefly at the beginning before we started, and we'll get there. So the purpose of the doing this book reviews was, probably not everybody is focused on reading books. One, yes, you can bring out the importance or significance of reading, right? Yes, it does help you evolve our own thought processes, evolve our own understanding of our limitations or our strengths, and that gives a greater sense of purpose, and probably help us realize our potential better in life. That was definitely one. And number two, you get to share your experiences, because we are not just talking about the concept. What we are trying to share is, okay, where did we apply, and how
Hmm.
did that make sense to me or you in the context of our life, right, and work. So that experience would be a good way of applying what you learned,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Which you don't get from reading a book. Essentially, you may read thousands of books, but until unless you have implemented something or applied something in life, it is just knowledge, it is not experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And always knowledge may not matter, but experience definitely matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, when you are experiencing this perspective, we are also bringing our own perspective, right? That's what you always say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And therefore, we are not here just to look at the framework as they are and preach, but also critique what is really, really into that, right? So that the people who join this particular group, they also understand that they have their own perspective, right? Every single tree is true partially. It's not that every single whatever has been said in this is a complete truth, but it is a true partially. And therefore, this forum brings that particular perspective. And welcome Dinesh and Roshni into this group, and thank you so much that you have joined us. We also invite you, welcome you to come and share your experiences when you go through this particular book. You can have a critic, you can have a question around that whatever the topic we bring in every single week going forward. So we also wanted to bring the people inside, and they talk about their experiences as we go through the book concepts and the philosophies present in that book.
Yeah, on that note, I also sent an invite to Dinesh, and once he accepts, probably I'll also invite uh, Roshni
Roshni.
as well. So
So please accept Dinesh, and you can all join us as a part of the video series, and then we can all discuss together.
yeah, hello Dinesh, welcome to the session. Thanks for joining us. Are
Thank
you
you.
able? Yeah, okay. Let me get Roshni as well if she can come on stage.
Dinesh, if you
Okay,
can
she
switch on your
Roshni
video,
has
it will be
joined
help.
from mobile. I think she may not be able to be invited on stage, so we will chat with her. Hey Dinesh, thanks for joining us today. Nice to have you. And we would, as Akhil mentioned, and we do that regularly. If somebody joins, yes, it's good to get your views as well as we go through the discussion, because we are not doing this as experts. We are doing this more as practitioners, right? And everybody's experience does matter. So Akhil, coming back to you were starting from where we started. So when I looked
Hmm.
at the concept itself, right, and
Hmm.
I may get beaten up for this for sure. It looks more like common sense, right? So start with why. So, should we say that yes, it is still uncommon in the world that yes, we have to read the book to understand that we need to start with why?
Actually, we do common things, right? But we are so much caught up with our left brain that we require a reason that why we are doing what we are doing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So common things still becomes uncommon because we trying to justify. So this book is absolutely a common sense. We have been doing this for the centuries, time in immemorial, right? For 5,000 years, we have been doing all of the things by the why, not by the what. Yeah. So it is very, very common. What has happened in this book is that he has given some pointer that why we should start with why. Yeah. So it is absolutely common.
Yeah, and when I looked at the book again, right, so it talks about why, how, and what in the golden circle, correct? And when I think about it, even in our coaching parlance, we do it a bit
Hmm.
differently. We say why, what, and the how, correct? But when I get a bit deeper into his why, how, and what, he's referring to the
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
as what probably the person or
Hmm.
the organization is doing today. He's talking about the present. He's essentially not talking about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
future what or what needs to happen. So is it right to say that probably that is
Hmm.
more a orientation of looking at where we are today with reference to purpose than defining a journey towards accomplishing it?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think he has a different way of presenting it. If you go by the coaching parlance, and Dinesh, welcome that you are also an agile coach, right? We do first why, right? If you look at that, we say that what define the topic is nothing but the why, and then we say what is that you really, really want out of it, right? That the outcome we define, and then we say okay, so for that particular outcome, this is what the actions should be. Yeah. What is it trying to do is that actually he is trying to go from the limbic brain, from the emotional side of it to the cognitive side of it, right? So if you look at the product is what the customers or the end customer sees or the client sees, and therefore he has put together at the end. But as a process, when we are building up the product and services, or if you are developing the content, if you are doing the service to the client, then first we define the why. Then I will say, okay, so what is this, and what is that if to fulfill this why, what exactly that I need to do. And then I will say, okay, to have to do this, I need to differentiate, I need to develop that action and what that action would be. Yeah. So he wanted to make it a little simpler for people to understand, but actually the real term which we do in the coaching as well, it is why, what, and the how. Nivarti,
Yeah,
to your
Dinesh,
point.
any views you have on that?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Yeah, it's more relevant, at least in the even today. I got that experience where I was pulled into prepare a presentation for a, uh, vice president visit next week from France, and we discussed the what part of it. Okay, this is what we are going to do, everything, and the last I did ask, okay, what we are why we are doing this, because it's a captive organization. Why at all we need to do this? So uh, that question really helped us to step back and see it, rather than focusing on how we want to present, what we want to present. Come on, guys, so why we wanted to do so. It might then only I mean this I asked because yesterday we were discussing with Akhil about this session as well. Okay, something has really struck me and asked to this small question: as a captive unit, why we were doing it? And that gave a different perspective of looking at the presentation itself. Yes, it's a VP at engineering space. We need to showcase our capability because the future projects might be he might be knowing, because as of now they are distance apart. They might be viewing us in a different context. Since he is coming us here, he should he should know how synergistically the IT department and the engineering department are working, and thereby it's a greater chances that the newer projects would come in. So that is the reason we are doing all those things. So I do draw the parallels.
Right, right. Beautiful. I
And
just wanted to little make
go ahead, Akhil.
sharper than effect. Yeah, so hearing from this or inferring from this is that when this guy is coming here, you wanted to create a belief within him that we are the right people to do your work, and therefore you can send this project to us, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the why is to touching the belief part of it, the emotional part of the vice president. No, these are the real goal. You can do my work. So you are creating the belief, you are creating the trust,
Mm.
you are creating the emotional bond with him, and that's the whole about, right? So you come here, you want to give us a work, how you should feel,
Mm.
right? And just give you one line, and then Nivarth, you can pick it up from there. Is that when you look at the 100 decisions which we make in our life, none is on the basis of the rational side of the brain. All that we do is we make the emotional decisions from the limbic brain, all of them, 100%, not even a single percent. And I have the research which you can send it. And then later on, we justify that why we have done what we have done. Yeah. So justification. So what you said is very right, that he is coming to create the belief that we can deliver what he is looking for. Yeah. So you have to capture his belief and deliver. Great point. Yes, Nivarti.
And when you touch that point, and I had this thing in mind, right? So one thing which is very important for us to pursue the passion, pursue the purpose, is the passion that we need. But when you look at the book, I tried to look quite a bit. It doesn't tell us how do I motivate, or how do I build my drive to pursue my purpose, even though you know it probably assumed that inherently when you identify and relate to your purpose, you may automatically have the motivation and the drive. But does that always happen? My experience is probably no. I have to find constant motivation for myself to be pursuing the purpose, or myself to be finalizing my objectives which align with my purpose, or even challenge myself to validate whether my objectives that I am setting really they align with my purpose. So there is a conscious need for constantly finding that motivation towards my purpose. So that's my experience, at least, in terms of, it's not just about defining the why. Yes, I know my why, but how committed to my why am I? There are a lot of elements that can influence that commitment. So how do you see that? Means it's for either of you, but that's what my experience has been in pursuing why.
Yeah, a very good question, Nivarti, and probably we'll have a discussion at some point of time. We'll bring it that book as well. I call it as a soul purpose. So when you have a sole purpose, then you don't require a additional adhesive to create the motivation for you, right? It's a soul driven purpose. So here he talks about the limbic brain, which is absolutely fine. But then how do you make this limbic driven purpose to a soul purpose is not talked about in this book. Yeah, because it is a very um, very much saying that, yeah, you need to develop the why, you need to have a belief. That how do you consistently keep that belief alive is not talked in this particular book, right? For that you require to go one more level deeper and develop that particular embodiment of that belief, that this is what I believe, that embodiment of that belief needs to be generated at some point of time in some other manner, right? And maybe we'll discuss at some point of time that how do you develop the soul driven purpose, the embodiment of that purpose, so that you don't require any additional motivation and adhesive to go forward with what is your purpose. Yeah, so maybe that we can discuss sometime later, Nivati, over the period of a couple of months down the line.
And any thoughts, Dinesh, on the drive towards your purpose?
Uh, I see this as a cyclic one where the purpose is where at times people say that it is the one which it drives you. So now we are looking at what should drive our to keep our purpose consistent, right? So mm, yeah, I'm I'm just wondering still what that would keep our momentum going
Yeah,
on.
means what drives the drive?
Yeah.
So what drives the drive?
So is that the
Drive.
yeah, in thermodynamics in the engineering we have this perpetual motion. So what keeps things on
Correct.
going on?
So even though he talks about the limbic brain, and which is of course influenced by emotional responses, but it is not directly influencing the emotions, right? So
Yeah.
how do you connect the heart, the passion, to your purpose?
Hmm.
And that is when I think you actually are able to pursue that consistently in life.
Yeah.
I hope Akhil comes back. I think he lost his connection. We'll wait for him.
Sure.
But those were some of the thoughts that primarily were going on. And whenever we talk about defining the purpose as well, how would how would we know that yes, this is the purpose I'm connected to?
Hmm.
And when do we know that okay, this is no longer relevant? Because uh, as we evolve as individuals in life, right? So our purpose also evolves,
Yeah.
and at some point it may happen that the purpose we had defined, let's say 10 years ago or 5 years ago, may not be relevant for tomorrow,
Yes.
or for me 5 years down the line. That again would have a lot of things to influence that. It may be where you are in life,
Life.
it
Yeah.
may be what you have accomplished so far in life,
Yes.
how is the social environment around you, right? There are many things. What are you going through at that point of time in life, right? So all this, when you look at, so how do you see that relevance to be consistently identified?
Yeah. Uh, since you picked up about the purpose, in speech, in public speaking as such, whenever we are drafting a speech, a script, always they recommend for two purpose. One is what is the generic purpose and what is the specific purpose. So,
Hmm.
so the generic and specific purpose in the speech, public speaking, writing context. So I could draw a parallel what you spoke now. Maybe we may need to find, okay, this is what maybe I'm assuming that, I mean, so in my case, it's 42 years old, that everything is possible. So at the max, so whatever the life I have left out with, what I'm going to do can be a generic purpose, and maybe the specific purpose, maybe the increment of it, maybe based on the relevance.
But again, then your what would you say? Means just extending on your generic and specific purpose. Ideally, your specific purpose, is it a superset of your generic purpose or a subset? How would you look at it?
I look at it as a subset.
Okay,
Okay.
but
That thought just came in, so I do not. I mean, I do not even.
yeah, means again, I'm drawing to your metaphor of your public speaking, right?
Yeah,
When you talk about public speaking, it is the specific message you want to convey
yeah.
that matters, right? So and then you create the generic ground towards that message being conveyed.
Okay, I would say it in a reverse. Say
Hmm.
for example, I write a speech. My generic purpose is it to entertain, is it to inspire, is it to persuade, or is it to inform? So what genre of my speech is all about? So that
Okay.
is the generic. The specific purpose, say for an example, in this context, say it's for about the information. So I can talk about, if my speech is all about information, my specific purpose might be I want to inform about the coaching trends in the agile coaching trends in India.
Hmm.
Specifically, I want to convey this information to the audience. So that's what we categorize the generic and the specifics.
Okay, that is more contextual to that particular topic.
Yeah,
But if you go a bit higher than that,
yeah.
what is your purpose of
So
wanting to
that
be a
is
public speaker?
that is even beyond it, right? As a speaker,
Correct.
what
So,
is the purpose?
what
Yes.
is your purpose? So,
Ah,
again, coming back to it, let's say even we were talking about initially that why are we doing this
ah,
at all, right? Why are we doing the book reviews in the first place?
hmm.
So, that is the primary purpose that we are specific purpose you are talking about.
Correct.
And then you are coming to a generic purpose which possibly corroborates or complements your specific purpose,
Yes.
right? And then within that context you may have again multiple layers within that. That's what I felt. So yeah, that's a different way of looking at it. Yes, that also definitely helps. So when I see that, uh, yes, welcome back, Akhil. Can you hear us? We can't hear you yet. No, not so far.
Akhil is wondering why this internet is unstable today.
Your mic is showing on, but probably we are not. It is not selected right.
No, no. I think since the uh, internet is unstable, it is not picking up the voice, and moreover, if we had have chosen the uh, HD mode, it might also
I
cause some
don't.
bad.
Okay, let's see if he comes back with. So again, if and Roshni says why
Yeah.
acts as a catalyst
Yes.
for
Whatever.
whatever you want to
Whatever.
pursue.
Yeah.
Um, I'm thinking it a bit differently, Roshni. What you pursue is your why. Should be your why.
Hmm.
right?
Mm,
Or whatever you pursue should fulfill your why.
mm,
So it would be really interesting to understand your perspective. We would have loved to have you on stage, but since you are on mobile, there is a system constraint. You cannot be invited to the stage. And again, Akhil, maybe you want to, or Dinesh, you may want to shed light on this. She says, why acts as a catalyst for whatever you want to pursue?
mm. Uh, yeah, I just wear a chemistry student hat here. Usually, catalyst is the one which it will be a part of reaction, but it won't get into the thing and it will come out, right? So, if I remember the catalyst definition as such, it will enhance the process, but it won't be part of the chemical reaction.
Mm.
I'm pretty bad at chemistry, so especially. So I wouldn't like to make a fool of myself more by talking about
So,
that
in
part.
this
But
context, if Y is a catalyst, so
Hello.
Y is the sole ingredient of our pursuit itself. So that's where I couldn't.
yeah,
So, I will have a different perspective onto that, right? For the purpose, you don't have to be catalyst.
Hmm,
And this is what we have been talking, both Nivarti and me have been talking, right? So in this book, it talks about that you have to become catalyst to your purpose, or that what you wanted to pursue, right? And therefore, you require additional material for you to continue on to your purpose, right?
hmm,
The the embodiment of the purpose is that you become who you are, right? So you are embodying your purpose. So there is no difference between your soul and the purpose.
hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the whole difference between these, right? So we do not really want to pursue that you become the the catalyst for your purpose to drive. Then it is the outside of you again, which is what we are talking about, inside outside, right? So that how do you embody it, right? So you don't have to really get up saying that I fear if I don't do it. Just do it. It's not by it. In the book also it talks about um, want to or have it. I
Hmm,
want to have or I want. I should have or I want. So that he is looking at that it should be just that. For an example, if you ask me to if you ask me to go back to work in a corporate, I would say no, I can't. Right? Yeah. Even if I get a big money, because that's not that motivates me. That's not my purpose, right? That I want to make money. The
so
whole
so it's
yeah.
not you can't, it's you that you won't.
Yeah, I will not.
Yeah.
I
So
don't want it. I
you
want.
won't do it even if it is, whatever money, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because the purpose you have defined now for yourself is different,
Correct.
correct? So and that I was thinking about a question, and now I lost it.
If the subject is like this, that we will get lost. Okay, so
Yeah.
absolutely fine.
So uh, the question I was having, or the point I wanted to make was, when you think about your purpose, a lot of people probably get confused between the objectives they have, and or the aspirations they have, and the purpose they are pursuing.
Hmm.
Have you come across that experience, that the people interchangeably talk about their objectives and purpose? So how do you differentiate your aspirations or objectives from your purpose?
Hmm. Very nice. Aspirations and inspiration. So that's a two different things. Yeah.
Aspirations may be inspired by many things, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
even objectives can be inspired by many things.
Hmm.
Let's say I look at Akhil every January 1st, and I see that he would have read another 1,000 books, and I am aspiring to read at least 100 books this year, and I miserably fail again. So that always happens, right? So that's,
Hmm.
I'm not talking about the inspiration behind the aspiration or the objective. What I'm trying to understand is, when I define my aspirations or I define my objectives, how do I know that that is not my purpose? Basically, those two
Hmm.
are different things.
Very good question. Very good question, right? So I think little more deeper we have to go, that there is a difference between purpose and the objective, right?
Yes.
So the objective is all about the left brain, right? And and the purpose is all about your that embodiment, right? How exactly it is. So you don't if you are on your purpose, you don't have to really define the objectives. That will happen by itself, right? So if you define objectives and then go to the purpose, it's going to be very different. I have this purpose and therefore I this is the outcome I'm producing, right? That's a it's a different world altogether. So that's the difference, that people really think about that what that is nothing but your objective, that's the outcome that you are looking for, and therefore define the purpose. No, it has to be different. The outcome is coming out, or the objective is coming out because of my purpose. I'm doing this because this is what is required, right?
Yes, and the beauty or the confusion, you can call it either way, is does usually we say uh, why we do what we do, right? Or our why should define the what. At the same time, we should question our what to identify the why. If you are strongly pursuing a certain objective, that let's say that I'm committed to becoming the best coach in the world, uh,
Hmm.
just I'm throwing it up,
Yeah.
and I'm that is my objective in life,
Hmm.
then the strength of that objective can actually go into identifying my purpose.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's what we do in the coaching, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do. That you don't know why you wanted to do these things, right? And therefore you go and ask, and that's a difficult part of it, right? Because people do not know why they are doing what they're doing. And that's for you have to have the probing, have that particular space for him to go and feel it. Go inside and find out that why do I want to become the best coach in the world, right? And because it's very easy to define my left rather than to go from the right, it's because that's how we have been set up from the childhood itself, right? The generations together, the environments which we have built up, it is all by that. And I would say, I'm just going to go a little further. We are so much influenced. I'm talking about our own stuff, that we have so much influenced by the Western cultures and impingement onto us, that we started doing that. If you go back some 400 years back, 5 years back, then we are all driven by a different mechanism called the purpose, or the right side of that work, right? Which is what we have been, our ethos, our culture, always driven from the right side of the brain, always. Yeah. But then the integration of many cultures across the globe, we are all becoming very cognitive. We are all driven by the left of our brains, right? And therefore we start looking for the objectives, and we don't talk about the purpose. If you look at our gurukuls, they had the purpose. If you look at the people who go on serve as a king, they had a purpose, that why they want to be, why they are the king, right? They were very, very clear. They were not having any other objectives, but they were driven by that. Yeah, and it's not that only there in this book. It talks about the Martin Luther King, but I talk about Mahatma Gandhi, or if I talk about uh, uh, Swami Vivekananda, right? From that perspective, they were not looking at objective. They had just the purpose, and then the different things will happen. The outcome will start coming, and all this. They were all just driven by that, right? And I was um, listening to somebody was talking about that Vivekananda, before he went to America, he went to Japan, and he said that all Indians should go to Japan and let to know that, right? Because if you look at that, some of the cultures, they are by default, they are purpose driven,
Mm.
right? And in this book also he talks about um, that the door, fixing the automobile doors, and they were trying to put together some stoppers so that the draw fit there. But in the Japan, they say that we don't look at that, it's by design, right? So the purpose is all ingrained culturally, right? This is the Western, this book is for the Western society, which is completely left sided. They have become the left sided, right? For us it is looks very difficult because we are culturally, and from the our DNA perspective, if you look at there, we are all purpose driven, if you go by our cultural stuff of it, right? I don't know whether I'm making sense, but that's how I feel. Indeed, in this book also it talks about the difference between the Japanese, the way they look at their design, versus the Americans who look at the design, right? And then it was not going well because they're looking from the cognitive side of it, for objective, right? The objective is to fix the door. Here, there's no objective, not to, I want to develop the best car, and therefore the door has to be great, right? If you recall that in the first
Yeah,
few chapters, it talks about.
agree. And I think he also touches upon. He starts with carrot and stick, of course, to
Yeah.
really make it a point that what we are defining as our purpose should be more intrinsic than extrinsic. So you don't define a purpose just means if I define my purpose looking at Akhil, it would be definitely not relatable in the long term, right? So from that point of view, and that leads definitely to our next session, which we will cover how the find your why. That's our next book, right, Akhil? So
Yeah.
we started with start with why, and we really wanted to make it a point on the significance of starting with why. But I think how you can make it intrinsic, and what are the different ways you can really look to define your why and consistently validate and challenge your why, whether it is still relevant.
Mm.
And then how do your objectives align, or if they align with your why, or they are entirely in a different point.
Inconsistent, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
I
they're
think
beautiful point. You
those
brought
are
that together.
those
Yeah.
are the topics I think we will cover in the next session where we talk about
Yeah.
finding your why.
Yeah.
So
And you are the very good point you said here, that that what is just checking the authenticity of your why.
yeah, absolutely.
So if you are consistently doing and feeling good about it, right, you are supercharged, then it's a very different world altogether, right? I'm not going very far off. Um, some days when I work for 18 hours, or I have seen many people who work for 18 hours and still they are not tired. The next day you will find that they're very fresh and they're doing it, right? Um, and there are some people that get exhausted. 3 hours, 4 hours work, and then I require some 7 days of foreign trips or some rest and whatnot. Yeah. So that is because he is not driven by the purpose. His objective is not what he believes in. It is just coming out because somebody have told me to do, or I'm forced to do that. I have to do it rather than I want to do it, right? So that the next session is definitely that what I want to really do, what is that I really believe in, and that purpose will go on. And then maybe we can also talk about, we can go deeper, that how to embody that particular purpose that
Yes,
you define for yourself.
correct. So and how you continuously validate the relevance, because when you were dropped when you dropped off, we were also talking about that purpose evolves. It's not that what my purpose was when I was
Beautiful.
18 years old to
Uh,
what I am today 53 years old is entirely different, because
Absolutely.
my understanding of the environment is different,
Yeah.
my understanding of myself is different, and where I am in life is different, correct?
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
even from that point of view, that consistent need for validation of the relevance of the why
Mm,
and then that validation of our alignment of our objectives to that relevance,
mm.
right? So that is something we should dig deeper in the
So
next.
we'll talk about that. The relevance, and Dinesh is aware of. We have our offline discussions onto that. Something called evolving self,
Mm.
right? There are great people who have talked about. So very you are very right when you say, Nivarti, that I'm 53-year old and I'm 18-year old. So very different mind. I would have evolved my mind to the next higher level of the mind, and therefore that the purpose which we I set at the age of 18 may not be relevant at this point of because I have evolved to a very certain level of objectivity, certain level of the subjectivity at that point has become very objective for me. Yeah. So we'll also talk about that what happens that you why you require to validate what is the purpose that you have set, right? And in that process the people will be able to see what is their evolution is all about, where they have moved in their life, where they have moved into the real determined embodied purpose, right? So beautiful point you said. Maybe we can talk about the evolving self at some point of later stages this year or maybe the next year.
That I think is inherent to defining your why.
Yeah.
If you don't realize that yourself evolves and you
Hmm.
are not conscious about it, I don't see a meaning of
Yeah.
the purpose itself.
Sure.
So I think it is very inherent, very closely knit with finding our why and making sure that it is relevant on at where you are in life. That
Absolutely.
right. So that's my view. Any last thoughts from either of you before we close the session today?
So I would like to have a just that what is that we are taking away today from this discussion.
So how would you start, Akhil? What is that you are taking away?
Today, though I lost my connection and I was trying to find out the new computer and then it was saying go and install. I said, this is what it is, right? There is Nivarti and there is Dinesh who are talking about, and I will join. So I did not lose myself. Yeah, so I was not having the fear, oh my God, I'm not. I was just thinking of that, and it was continued, feeling refreshed that we have started this work once again this year. Yeah. And in this discussion it gave me a different perspective of the book itself, right? The other thing which I'm taking at is that we are becoming ease of criticizing the concepts which has been put together as well, and that's the another level of reading, that can you critique a particular thought process of a writer? Can you critique um, can you look at from your experiences, and not that you are not withholding that perspective, that perspective is also right, but there is another perspective that I have. Yeah. And that both of them are right partially, right? And how do I feel about when I criticize? Oh, I don't want to critique. Uh-huh. That means there is something. So that is what I'm taking back today. I'm seeing that how much I have evolved to critique a book or draw something from there and withhold it and see what next can be done, which we have done today, right? That, yeah, certain books and certain things which are going to talk about.
Hmm.
Yes, Dinesh.
Yeah. For me, it's quite an unconventional book review. Normally, it goes with just saying it. This is what I have read, and this is maybe I would have applied it. But something profound of this statement, I always admire Akhil using this. Uh, Everything has a truth, but everything has a part of the truth, right? So here I say is truth is there in this book, and it's a part of the truth, and what we have to use it beyond the book, the narrator's point of view, and look from a different perspective. So that is one key takeaway I really get inspired by this conversation. Second is looking at a different perspective where the western I mean, for which audience majority the book is been intended to, and what is our roots of it, right? So always we'll be getting, I mean, at least I personally getting carried away by the books which have been written by the Western. Uh, from a cognitive perspective, now I also look at from what how we can relate from our own cultural perspective. So these are the newer things I really pick it up from today's conversation. And
Yeah.
third, okay, third is Niviti's point of uh, uh, purpose is not constant. So it is quite, uh, uh, or the thought about the purpose is not constant. It will evolve over the period based on the various factors which we are associated with. So,
You get a clarity. Yes, you will get the clarity. The more clearer it becomes, right?
yeah.
So you start getting the crystal clear purpose. The way you reach 53 of Nivarti's age of that kind, right? So you'll have a very crystal clear purpose. And I'm very admirer of Nivarti. He is very clear about his purpose, what he's doing. Yeah.
Okay. So when I heard you, I really like the word you use, truth and not fact, because when you use truth, and if you get into our WhatsApp group, I think we had a broad discussion for 2 days about difference between a truth and a fact, and that's a probably a separate discussion altogether to have. And talking about Akhil's point of critiquing a book, I think it's very important to highlight the difference between criticizing a book and critiquing a book, right? So especially for the listeners, we are not criticizing the book, we are critiquing the book, which means we are trying to look at it from our perspective. And as Dinesh mentioned, the author's target audience might have been entirely different, because every author, having written two books myself, every author defines a set of audience that they want to focus on. Nobody can write a book that appeals to the whole world. It can never happen. uh, that's my view, and I may be biased in that, but every author has a select audience whom they are focusing on. So and if I would have read that book probably when I was 25, my understanding of the book would have been entirely different. My perspective of the book would have been entirely different. So, if somebody is listening to this conversation and if you feel that what we are speaking is probably not resonating with you, it may just be that you are much beyond what we are discussing, or you are much, a bit early in life to what we are discussing. So nothing is right or wrong. It's our perspective based on where we are with our evolved self of who we are. So I just want to put that disclaimer, and it's not to show that what is written is not right. It is just to show that how we are applying it, how we are looking at it probably is a bit different, and it may be absolutely wrong. And at least I am perfectly okay with that point. So with that said, thank you everyone for listening to us. And Dinesh, it was wonderful to have you. This is the first time we are connecting, and I hope we continue to connect in future as well. And Akhil, I don't need to say thanks to you because we are
Yeah.
partners in crime. So
Yeah. And
have a
Dinesh,
great time.
going forward, we would like you to spread this in your communities. People can join and experience it. Our whole purpose of this particular group is that how do we how do we connect with the people? How do we make people read? How do we develop their evolving self so that they can support whatever they are doing in their life? Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you next 15 days, 2 weeks. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you.